Joy had never imagined that a single glass of wine could rewrite her destiny. She was a young, humble African waitress working in one of Seoul's most prestigious hotels, a place where she served the rich but never belonged. Her days were long, her pay was little, but her smile never faded. She had come to Korea to chase a better life for her sick mother back home, but all she had found was struggle and loneliness. Until that night, the hotel was glittering with lights for the annual Seoul Elite Gala, a gathering of the country's wealthiest tycoons and politicians. The air smelled of luxury and power. Joy was trembling slightly as she carried a tray of drinks, whispering the names of the guests to herself so she wouldn't make a mistake. But fate had other plans. When she reached table 7, she accidentally set a crystal glass of red wine, meant for a diplomat, before Duri Kong, Korea's youngest billionaire. He was the type of man who made silence follow him when he entered a room. Tall, sharply dressed in black, with a face so cold it looked carved from marble. He was feared in the business world for his ruthless intelligence and rumored mafia ties. Duri lifted the glass, swirled it, and took a sip, just as the diplomat shouted, "That's not mine!" Joy froze. Her heart dropped. Before she could stammer an apology, Duri looked up at her, his dark eyes narrowing, then softening with something strange, something almost curious. "What's your name?" he asked in a low, commanding tone. Joy, sir." "I'm so sorry, Joy," he repeated, tasting her name like it was part of the wine. "You delivered this to me? By mistake?" "Yes, sir." He leaned back, his gaze burning through her. Then maybe that mistake was meant to happen. That night, Duri did something no one had ever seen him do. He left the gala early, following the trembling waitress into the staff corridor. He cornered her gently, his voice softer now. "I don't usually let anyone get away with errors," he murmured. "But there's something about you. Something I can't explain." Joy didn't know how to react. His closeness made her heart pound. He reached out, brushing a stray curl from her face, and for the first time in her life, someone looked at her not as a servant, but as a woman. Days passed. Duri kept showing up at the hotel, always sitting in Joy's section, always asking for her. He'd find excuses to talk to her, to hear her laugh, to see her blush. Despite her efforts to keep things professional, the pull between them grew unbearable. One rainy evening, after everyone had left, he appeared again. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said, his voice deep and honest. "I don't know why, but I feel like you were sent to me." Joy's heart raced. "Sir, please? You're from a world I don't belong in." He took her hands. "Then let me bring you into mine." And he did. He whisked her away from her small rented room to his glass mansion overlooking the Han River. He showed her sunsets from his private helipad, laughter-filled dinners in his quiet kitchen, slow dances beneath the city lights. Duri, the feared billionaire, became gentle in her presence, smiling, cooking for her, teasing her shy laughter. When the media found out about their romance, the world called her names. A gold digger, a scandal, a mistake. But Duri silenced them all. One evening, at his family's grand estate, he gathered Seoul's elites again, the same faces who had seen her as nothing more than a servant. He walked Joy down the aisle, his eyes soft and sure. "She gave me a taste of life sweeter than any fortune," he said before the altar. "And today, I choose her forever." Joy's tears sparkled like the diamonds around her neck, but it wasn't the jewels that made her glow. It was love, raw and unexpected. As the priest blessed them, Duri lifted her veil and whispered, "You gave me one mistaken drink, Joy, and I'll spend the rest of my life toasting to that mistake." Their lips met, tender, slow, and full of everything they'd both been missing. It wasn't just a love story. It was a collision of worlds. A poor waitress and a powerful billionaire bound by destiny, by a sip of fate that turned into forever. The world knew them as the billionaire and the waitress. But in their home, behind glass walls and morning sun, they were simply Duri and Joy. After the wedding, Duri whisked Joy away from Seoul to his private villa on Jeju Island, a sanctuary wrapped in ocean mist and blooming camellias. The waves kissed the shore like soft music, and the air always smelled of salt and spring. Joy had never seen such beauty. She stood by the balcony every dawn, watching the sunrise paint the sea gold, her heart full of gratitude and disbelief. Duri would appear behind her, arms sliding around her waist, his breath warm against her neck. "Still can't believe it's real?" he'd whisper. She'd smile shyly. "Sometimes I think I'm dreaming." "Then never wake up," he'd murmur, pressing a kiss on her shoulder. Their mornings were tender chaos. Duri, despite his perfectionist ways, insisted on cooking breakfast with her. He would roll up the sleeves of his silk shirt, tie an apron clumsily around his waist, and look adorably lost among the spices. "Joy," he'd say, squinting at the frying pan, "why does my egg look like a crime scene?" She would burst into laughter, nearly dropping the plate. "Because, my love, you flipped it like a business deal. Too fast and too hard." He chuckled, wiping a bit of oil from her cheek with his thumb. "Then teach me gently." Their fingers would brush as they cooked together, and the small kitchen would fill not just with the scent of food, but with laughter, teasing, and soft kisses stolen between stirring and tasting. After breakfast, Duri would take her to the beach. They'd walk barefoot along the sand, hand in hand, letting the waves chase them like playful children. Joy loved collecting seashells. Duri loved watching her do it. She would kneel to pick one, and he'd tuck a strand of her hair behind her ear. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Joy turned to him and said softly, "You gave me the world, Duri, but all I ever wanted was love." He took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "Then I'll spend my life proving to you that love can be as infinite as the sea." They sealed his promise with a kiss, slow, sun-warmed, and deep enough to make the ocean blush. At night, they would sit by the fire pit, wrapped in a blanket, sipping wine. Yes, the same brand she had once mistakenly delivered him. Duri would rest his head on her lap, his fingers lazily tracing her palm. "Joy," he'd murmur, looking up at her. "Do you know why I fell for you?" She shook her head, her curls brushing his face. "Because you never saw my money. You only saw me." She smiled and whispered back, "Because you looked past my uniform and saw joy." The stars twinkled like blessings above them. Months passed, and their love only grew deeper. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that breathes quietly, softly, like the rhythm of waves. Duri became warmer, more human. Joy became bolder, glowing with the confidence his love gave her. One evening, when she told him she was expecting their first child, he didn't say a word. He just dropped to his knees, tears gleaming in his dark eyes as he placed his hand gently on her belly. "You've given me everything," he whispered, "a mistake that turned into eternity." Joy laughed, turning in his arms. "You already do too much." "Not enough," he said. "I'd give up every deal, every company, if it meant keeping you both safe." That night, when the labor pains began, it was raining soft, warm rain that smelled of earth and life. Duri panicked at first, running around the villa calling for the doctor, fumbling with towels and blankets, while Joy, though exhausted, couldn't help but laugh. "Mr. Kong, the ruthless billionaire," she said between breaths. Finally scared of something, he kneeled beside her, clutching her hand, sweat glistening on his brow. "I'm scared of losing you, Joy. Nothing else matters." Hours later, their son was born, tiny, crying, beautiful. When the doctor handed the baby to Joy, Duri's breath caught. The moment she cradled their child, her eyes shining with tears, he knew he was witnessing something sacred. Joy looked up at him. "Meet your father, little one." Duri touched the baby's cheek with trembling fingers. His voice broke as he whispered, "He looks like you, my Joy." Then, for the first time in his life, Duri Kong, the untouchable man of steel, wept openly. In the following days, their home became heaven. Duri would wake at night just to watch them sleep, Joy with the baby resting on her chest, her lips curved in peaceful dreams. Sometimes he'd reach out to brush a lock of hair from her face, whispering softly, "Thank you for giving me a life worth living." During the mornings, Joy would hum lullabies from her childhood while cooking breakfast with one arm, the baby cradled in the other. Duri would join her, taking the baby so she could rest, his deep voice teasing, "He already has your stubbornness. And your eyes?" She'd reply with a smile. Sometimes, while Joy fed their son, Duri would read aloud from his business papers, turning board reports into bedtime stories. She'd laugh until tears filled her eyes. "You're spoiling him already. I'm just preparing him to take over everything. My empire, my heart, and you." Their evenings were the sweetest. Long walks along the beach with their baby tucked between them, the stars watching quietly above. Duri would stop sometimes, just to look at Joy holding their child. "How can something so perfect belong to me?" he'd whisper. "Because love doesn't ask who deserves it," Joy would reply, resting her head on his shoulder. "It just finds you." And it had found them, through a mistake. A sip of wine, a world of differences, and a love strong enough to rebuild both their lives. On their first anniversary as parents, Duri prepared a surprise. He decorated the villa with candles and flowers, cooked her favorite meal himself, with only a few burnt edges, and poured 2 glasses of wine. "To the woman who turned a mistake into a miracle," he said softly, his eyes shimmering. Joy smiled through happy tears. "To the man who made love feel like home." As the baby slept nearby, they leaned close, the sound of the waves mixing with their laughter and the quiet beating of their hearts. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better, a love that bloomed out of imperfection and grew into forever. Years passed, and yet every morning in the Kong household still began with the same quiet rhythm. Laughter, the soft aroma of coffee, and the feeling that love had built its roots deep into every corner of their lives. Joy and Duri were no longer just lovers. They were partners, dreamers, and parents who had learned that romance didn't fade after the wedding. It evolved. Their son, Ha-jun, had grown into a curious little boy with Duri's eyes and Joy's warmth. He filled their home with energy and endless chatter, but instead of dimming the love between his parents, he made it stronger, binding them with a new kind of tenderness. Each day began with the 3 of them in the kitchen. Joy, still in her silk robe, would make breakfast while Duri stood beside her, sleeves rolled up, whisking eggs with exaggerated seriousness. "Remember how I used to burn toast?" he'd ask. "You still do," Joy teased, handing him a plate. He'd grin, stealing a kiss before their son's voice interrupted. "You, Appa. No kissing in the kitchen." They'd laugh, and Duri would scoop Ha-jun into his arms, spinning him in circles until the boy shrieked with joy. It was chaos, happy, golden chaos, and Joy loved every second of it. Their love story didn't stop at home. Together, they began to build something greater. Duri, inspired by Joy's compassion, decided to create a new foundation, one that supported women from underprivileged backgrounds, giving them education and jobs. Joy led it with passion, mentoring young women who reminded her of her past. She would often tell them, "Dreams don't have to come from wealth. Sometimes they begin with a mistake and grow into miracles." Duri watched her work from afar with pride. He had conquered empires, but the sight of Joy teaching others kindness humbled him more than any success ever could. At night, after their son was asleep, they would sit on the balcony, looking out over Seoul's glittering skyline. Joy would rest her head on his shoulder, and he'd draw invisible hearts on her palm with his fingers. "Do you ever miss your old life?" he'd ask softly. "The one before you?" she'd whisper. "No, I was surviving then. With you, I'm living." He'd turn, kiss her forehead, and say, "Then let's keep living, building, dreaming, loving, until time forgets us." And they did. They traveled the world together, to Paris, where Duri surprised her with a street full of roses, to Kenya, where Joy took him to meet her mother, and Duri knelt to thank her for raising the woman who saved his soul. He built a school there, in her mother's village, naming it Joy's Light. The first classroom bore a plaque that read, "For the girl who turned my world into something worth sharing." Joy wept when she saw it. Duri just held her close and said, "I didn't save you, Joy. You saved me." Back in Korea, their life only grew richer, not with money, but with moments. Rainy afternoons cooking together. Movie nights where Duri would pretend to fall asleep just so she'd rest her head on his chest. Long drives along the coast, with the wind in her curls and his hand on her thigh, whispering, "You're my peace, Joy. You're my forever." And as years turned into decades, the world changed, but they never stopped toasting to the same thing. One mistaken glass of wine. One accidental moment. One love that never faded. In the twilight of their lives, they sat together in the same villa where it all began, now surrounded by grandchildren's laughter, the scent of flowers, and the endless ocean stretching before them. Duri poured 2 glasses of red wine and handed one to Joy. "Still think it was a mistake?" he asked with that same crooked smile. She chuckled, her eyes soft and knowing. "No, Duri, it was destiny." Disguised as a spilled drink, they clinked their glasses, their fingers brushing, their hearts still beating in rhythm. Proof that some loves don't end. They simply grow deeper with time. And as the waves whispered against the shore, Joy and Duri sat hand in hand. Not the billionaire and the waitress anymore, but 2 souls who had built a beautiful future. One tender, imperfect, unforgettable moment at a time. Years drifted by softly, like petals falling from a flower long in bloom. The world around them changed. The city grew brighter. Their son became a man, and Joy's laughter filled new rooms where grandchildren ran barefoot and free. But in their hearts, nothing ever changed. Duri and Joy remained the same. 2 souls still bound by that one serendipitous night when a simple mistake brought love where neither had expected it. They had built more than wealth, more than a name. They had built a life. A home full of warmth, kindness, and memories that glowed even in silence. The foundation they created together had grown into one of Korea's most respected charities, helping thousands of women find hope again. Every time Joy visited, she would smile at the young waitresses and tell them, "I started just like you. Don't stop believing that love and destiny can find you anywhere." And every time Duri watched her speak, pride swelled quietly in his chest. One golden evening, as the sun melted into the sea outside their villa, Joy sat beside Duri on the old wooden bench overlooking the waves. The air smelled of salt and camellias, just like the first day they came to Jeju. Duri took her hand, his touch still steady, still gentle. "Do you ever think," he asked softly, "what life might have been if you hadn't given me that wrong glass of wine?" Joy smiled, her eyes glimmering like the sunset. "Then maybe someone else would have served it. But no one else could have loved you like I did." He chuckled, his thumb brushing over her ring. "Then I thank fate for your mistake every single day." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "And I thank fate for letting you see beyond mine." The evening deepened. The waves whispered their eternal rhythm, the same sound that had carried every memory of their life together. Duri lifted a bottle of that same red wine and poured it into 2 glasses. Their hands shook a little now, age softening every motion, but the love between them was still fierce, still alive. He raised his glass. "To us, to the waitress who stole my heart." Joy smiled, her voice tender and trembling. "To the billionaire who taught me that love is richer than gold." Their glasses touched with a soft chime, and they drank. A final toast to a lifetime built from one beautiful mistake. As the last light of day wrapped around them, they sat together in silence. The kind of silence that belongs only to those who have truly loved and lived. And as the stars began to appear, Duri whispered, "Forever, Joy." Her fingers tightened around his. "Forever," she breathed back. There, under the fading sun and the endless sea, their story came to rest. Not in sadness, but in peace. Because their love, born from chance and tested by time, had become what all love dreams to be: eternal. They no longer lived for grand gestures or champagne nights. Their romance had become simpler, warmer, the kind that lived in the little things. Every morning, Duri still woke first. He would sit beside Joy and just watch her sleep, her curls spread over the pillow like soft clouds. The years had added faint lines to her face, but to him, she was more beautiful than ever, because those lines were written by laughter, by love, by life shared with him. He would brush a kiss over her forehead. "Good morning, my joy," he'd whisper. And she, half asleep, would smile without opening her eyes. "You're watching me again, aren't you?" "Always," he'd answer, chuckling softly. "You're my favorite sight." They still cooked together every day, their tradition since the very beginning. The kitchen was filled with laughter, teasing, and the soft clatter of pans. Duri, though now slower with his hands, still insisted on preparing her favorite dishes himself. Sometimes he'd sneak behind her as she cooked, wrapping his arms around her waist, murmuring against her neck. "Remember when I couldn't even fry an egg?" She'd laugh. "And now you're a 5-star chef." "No," he'd whisper, kissing her cheek, just a man still hopelessly in love with his wife. When evenings came, they'd walk along the garden path, their fingers intertwined. The air would be full of the scent of jasmine and sea breeze. Sometimes, they didn't need words. Their steps, their smiles, their shared glances were enough. On weekends, Joy would play old music on their record player, the kind they had danced to in their youth. Duri would reach for her hand, bowing slightly and say, "May I have this dance, Mrs. Kong?" And she'd laugh, pretending to hesitate. "You'll make my knees hurt." "I'll hold you tight," he'd promise. They would sway slowly across the living room, his hand firm on her back, her head resting on his chest. The sound of the waves mixed with the melody, and for those few moments, time itself seemed to stop. Sometimes, as the record faded, Duri would whisper, "Joy, do you ever get tired of me?" She'd look up at him, eyes glowing with the same light she'd had years ago. "How could I ever get tired of the man who still makes my heart race?" He'd smile, that same boyish smile he used to hide behind cold business masks, and kiss her softly. And even now, every anniversary, Duri brought out the same wine, the one that had started it all. He'd pour it carefully, hand her a glass, and say with a warm, teasing smile, "To my beautiful mistake." Joy would raise hers with a sparkle in her eye. "To the man who made every mistake feel like destiny." They would drink, laugh, kiss, and remind the world that love doesn't fade with age. It deepens. Because for Joy and Duri, romance was never about grand moments. It was about every sunrise shared, every laugh echoed, every meal cooked together, and every heartbeat that whispered the same word over and over. And so, they lived, not in the past, not chasing youth, but in the endless present of love that never lost its warmth. Every day, Duri still looked at Joy the way he did that first night, as though fate had handed him the rarest treasure in the world. And Joy still smiled at him the way she had in that hotel years ago, with the light of a woman who had turned a simple act of kindness into a lifetime of love. Joy and Duri's love didn't just give them happiness. It gave them a legacy. Over time, their bond grew into something the world couldn't help but admire. A home filled with warmth, laughter, and unbreakable unity. Their son, Hajun, grew up surrounded by the example of what love could be. Gentle, respectful, and constant. He inherited his father's calm determination and his mother's tender heart. And when he married a bright, kind woman named Amara, Joy and Duri welcomed her like the daughter they never had. The Kong family home became a sanctuary, not of wealth, but of togetherness. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment. Also like, share, and subscribe to my channel and click on the notification icon so that you will get notified whenever a new story is uploaded.